I am very excited today because I get to talk about one of my most favorite things in the whole world, which is brushes, brushwork, brush strokes. I love it. So if I look any tanner than usual, it is because I have been baking in the sun for 2 weeks in Puerto Escondido. We did a beautiful art retreat. So if any of my art retreat ladies are watching, hello, hola, and we had an incredible time. So we did lots and lots of painting. We were like parked out right on this incredible beach. We had the most amazing sunrises and sunsets every day. It was a blast, and I just loved getting to know all the artists that came on this retreat. We had a lot of incredible conversations, and so it was really great. So I have been a professional artist for, since 1996. So I don't know what the math is now. Is that 25 years, 28 years, 27 years, something like that? I, started out right after college and started painting for the decor market. After a year of working for a company, doing that, I went out on my own, and I've been basically unemployable ever since. I've worked with dealers, consultants, designers. I've been selling my work in galleries to collectors also. My husband is also an artist, and we have 4 kids who are now grown. They're all adults, and they all also paint professionally and sell their artwork. That's just a little bit about me. In 2010, I opened Milan Art Institute to help artists turn their passion for art into a profession. That is why I do what I do, because I, like you, just want to paint all the time. I love painting, and a lot of people want to be a full-time artist, but they, have to make money at a job, and they haven't figured out how to earn enough money with their art to be able to do it full-time as an artist. And I wanted to change that. I wanted to sort of disrupt the art education field and have a fast track to being able to gain the skill, find your voice, and be able to sell your artwork for a living. In this workshop, we are going to talk about brush strokes and how to use brushes. So I have all kinds of brushes here. This is brushes that we made, our Fearless set. So they say right on it, fearless, because we want you to be fearless with your brush strokes. And that, I find, is a lot of things that holds artists back from making beautiful brush strokes, because it feels like a little bit nervous to make that big of a statement and make that brush stroke, and is it going to be right, and am I going to just have this big blob of paint on my canvas that I'm not going to like. So that's why we called this set Fearless. And it's a mixed media set, so you can use it for acrylic or oil. I usually use these for acrylic, and then I have a different set that I use for oil. There's all kinds of different types of brushes. I'm going to go into all the different kinds of brushes and how to use them. This is a really, really cool brush. And they're all cool. Actually, I don't know. It's hard to know which one is my favorite. So I really love them. I love how they look. Each have like a different color on the end, so kind of by sight when they're laying on the table, your mind starts to remember which brush is what based on the color. And then I have all these brushes. I got big ones, little ones, and I'm going to show you how to use them, how to make different kinds of brush strokes. I'm going to work on this half painted painting. It's not finished yet, and to demonstrate all the different ways to use these brushes. I'm using oil today, but whatever I'm teaching, you can use oil or acrylic. I'm using oil though, because this painting so far has oil on it. I also have a little bit of Galkid in here, so I'll use some solvent and some Galkid to thin the paint. Sometimes I use thick paint just as is with no medium in it, and sometimes I want to thin it depending on the effect I'm trying to get. So I'll go into that as well. The first thing though I want to show you is what not to do. So I'm going to show you first what not to do, then I'm going to show you what to do, and then after I show you what to do, I'm going to show you what my favorite brush is and why. But first, let's talk about what not to do. So what you don't want to do is use the same brush the whole time. That is definitely a no-no. So a lot of people pick a medium-sized brush and just use it the whole time for everything. And they don't change up the shape, they don't change up the size or the type of fiber or hairs that it has. And so they get the same old brushstroke all the time. And what ends up happening on your painting is you're not able to really have a variety of brushstrokes that really speak. So you want to use lots of brushes. I would say on average from start to finish, I probably use at least 10, 12 brushes. Most artists I know, when they're first starting out, probably use about 3 brushes. And so if that is you, change that up. You should be using at least 10 or 12 brushes, and not just out of obligation, but because you really want to, because you found all the different things that they can do and you want those different effects in your painting. The other thing that you don't want to do is blend everything. So there's this default that people have. I see a lot of people have it. So I'll demonstrate what not to do. This area here on the cheek. And looking at my source, it's light bluish color. Just mix up a light bluish color, throw a teeny bit of a complement in there, just so it's not so bright. And then what a lot of people do is this sort of dibbity dab, 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 blendy, blendy, dab, dab, dab. And they want to erase, almost like an airbrush did it. And they just want to erase everything they're doing. And it's just blendy, blendy, dab, dab, blend, blend, blend. So it's got this kind of flat look to it. And then when it starts to get darker, then they just basically add a little more paint into it, less white, same color, no variety. And then they begin blending a little bit darker, blend, blend, blend. And then they go, oh, it's got to go darker still. And then they blend it even darker. And that's how they get that hollow of the cheek. And so it has this really like, I don't know. It's like you're just erasing, what could be there. And a lot of people too, what happens is they intend to make brush strokes, and so they go, okay, I'm gonna make a brush stroke. I'm gonna do it. And so then they put a brush down and they go, oh my gosh, oh, that's so bright, that's so like evident, and it makes them feel worried and scared and like that is too flashy. So then they go in and then they start blending everything with what's there, and then they feel better and like, oh, okay, that's better. Now it doesn't show as much, and and so now you feel safe. And my theory, I could be wrong, and maybe people are different, but my theory is, because I used to be a blendy, smoothie, and what happened is when I put the brush stroke and it felt so strong and evident and showy and flashy, this thing inside me would scream and say, who do you think you are? Don't be so flashy. Don't be so flamboyant. Don't put it out there so much. And something inside of me, it was subconscious, would want to hide it and cover it up and let it disappear and blend and smooth into everything around it. And at first, I thought, well, that's just like how I paint. That's my style. But then I realized it was definitely coming from a place of weakness, because I felt so, bad when I would see something like that, like a brushstroke. And then what I learned as I became more comfortable stepping into my power and stepping into my true self and who I really am and allowing myself to be seen and heard, then what I realized is that brushstroke, as soon as you add a few more around it that also show the form, and you just plant like another one next to it and another one next to it there, then by association, by just being around other brush strokes that also are, kind of flashy, it begins to make sense with the form. I learned that this is how you start stacking these brush strokes up. You can begin to really make something beautiful by allowing the brush strokes to show. Sometimes you might want to have something really energetic in there and full of expression. And now the energy that I added that brush stroke there is recorded forever. There's this little blue line, and then that blue, and then the light, and then that, and it went from here down. You can feel the energy that went into it. You can feel that intensity that came with it. You can feel that this one just sort of was kind of left there. and that energy that went into it. So however you deliver your brushstrokes, and they'll vary depending on how you're feeling, what's going on in your mind as you're painting. It could be the season of your life and the things that you're going through or overcoming. They're all recorded in that brushstroke. So I highly encourage people to leave those brushstrokes. Do not blendy, smoothie everything. Don't cover it up. Don't hide it. Don't let it disappear into the background. Let it show, because people love to see it. People can feel your paint. They can feel your energy when you're painting. But I would even go as far as to say that everything in my life, all the pain that I've gone through and everything that I've overcome in my life, and therefore the authority and empowerment I have in that overcoming, is recorded in my brushstroke. Every brushstroke is unique. I can lay a brushstroke that nobody else can put down, and you can lay down a brushstroke nobody else can put down. It's never replicated exactly the same. Every single brushstroke is completely unique. The hieroglyph of our life on the canvas and encoded in it is our overcoming, is our courage, is those things that have tried our mettle and we've proven ourselves with. That is why art is so healing. That is why art is so emotionally effective. It doesn't matter as much about the image. The image can move people, but it's those brushstrokes that really grip people. It's the brushstrokes, it's the energy, the delivery of the paint that really, really, truly moves people. So, these tools that we have, these brushes and all their shapes and sizes, are swords, are weapons to change the world with. As soon as you come out of that thinking that we are making the painting and it doesn't matter what brush I use, I can just pick my favorite brush and just use it the whole time. And we start to realize that every one of these brushes has the capacity to harness our energy or harness what it is we want to say in a specific way. And that when we combine our intent with what these tools can do, you're going to have so much expression and life in your canvases that your paintings could even make people cry. There is a time and a place for blendy, smoothie. You can create contrast where you have an area that's really smooth and blended out and just this soft sort of backdrop, so that when you add those brush strokes, it makes a real statement. So I'm not saying that you can never, ever blend, but I think it should be done with intention and not just a default of what to do. Okay, so the last thing you do not want to do the stab and dab. So what is stab and dab? You want to use a lot of different brushes. We know that you don't want to just blend everything by default because you are afraid to let your brush strokes show and it feels safe to cover them up. And then the third thing you do not want to do is stab and dab. So stab and dab is when I am working on an area and I take the same brush and I just do this, stab and dab, right? And then go back and I do the same exact brush stroke and it's stab and dab and stab and dab. And so you end up with this sort of monotonous brushstroke that you can't get away from. Typically, the stab and dabs are on this round brush. You just don't want to do that. Your brush should be moving in all kinds of different ways. This, that, this, up, down, over, up, right? You should always move your brush in all kinds of different ways. Stab and dab is stab, dab, right? Your marks will be arbitrary. They won't mean anything. And so those aren't good brush strokes. So stab and dab is not what you want to do. You want your brush strokes to go with the form. And so if you see a square shape of a light there, hit it like that. If you see another one that's kind of long, then you hit it like that. If this one over here is kind of turned, then you do that, right? So your brush is always moving in different directions according to the form, according to the shape that you see and you're emulating from your source or what you're looking at. Those are what not to do. Now I'm going to move into what to do. But as a segue, I want to show you guys how do you resurrect dead brushes, okay? We all have them. We all have those brushes that I have a bucket right here of dead, tormented, awful brushes. So this one is full of clumpy bits of oil. It was left too long, and you can see on the edge, it's just like gross little oil boogers. To get that clean would be really difficult. This is just stiff at the ends, and over here on this corner, it's super stiff. Okay, so this is no longer soft like it's supposed to be. There's some in here that actually make noise. It's so trashed, it's hard. Like you could hurt somebody, you could stab somebody with that. Like you probably can't even go on an airplane with this one. There's so many brushes in here that are ruined. Oh my gosh, this is my favorite. So we have a little boy that comes into the studio who's about, little over 2 years old. And he got a hold of this brush and he put it in acrylic plastic paint. And this is completely and utterly ruined. There's no way to use that brush. It's one of my favorites. It's not my favorite, but it's one of my favorites, which is a script brush, and it's ruined. So this fan brush, it doesn't do anything that it's supposed to. So you get the hint, you get the idea. All these brushes are super ruined. They're hard, they're stiff, gross. So what you do with your brushes is you just find a bucket, you stick them all in like this. You want to use this Murphy's soap, okay? And you can just get this at Walmart, Amazon. And if you live in Europe or Australia or some other part of the world and you don't have this brand, it's basically, you can look it up. It's wood cleaner, concentrated wood cleaner. So it's like for wood floors. You can read about what the ingredients are and then find what it is in your country. So I'm pouring a whole bunch of it in this bucket. I'm going to let it sit for about 2 weeks. You don't have to do anything except just make sure they're all in there. These are some brushes that I just took out, and they were all hard and ruined, and now they're soft and usable, and some got kind of misshapen. The cheaper ones will be, misshapen. Other ones you can kind of form by, doing this while they're still wet, and they'll sort of go back to their form. Then when you're all sad and crying because your favorite brushes got ruined, they're not. All you have to do is put them in that Murphy soap. So back to what to do. So now we told you what not to do. Now I'm going to tell you different things that I do and what they're for. So this big brush, I'm going to start with the filberts. So anything with a round tip like this is called a filbert brush. These brushes, I'm going to paint with them in a minute, but they work great for portraits because a lot of things like cheeks or lips sort of have that shape. I like to start with bigger brushes first and then put like a big brush stroke down like this. I got to cover up my stab and dab. And then I like to stack bigger ones on top. Taking a little bit of a compliment and putting it next to it. Every time I get new paint, I try to get a slightly different color so it doesn't have that monotonous look. Okay, so this is all just basically with the same brush. And then I can go to a smaller filbert and get a little bit more of the details on there. and stack up some other brush strokes. And typically what I do in the order of what I do is I like to use my big brush all over and then kind of come in with a smaller brush after, instead of, doing it like I'm demonstrating here, where I first put the big brush and now the little one and work an area. I usually work all over first. So then if you want more variety still, I can switch to this smaller square brush and begin to add, some other shapes in there. And if it starts to feel like it's getting muddy or it's all kind of blending and your brush strokes aren't showing, then you can just, keep moving around and come back a different day. You want your brush strokes to kind of, stack up and for them to still be seen. So again, my favorite thing is to kind of more move around and not just stay in one spot. And you can use like the side of the square brush, like I'm doing, to kind of get that sort of scumbly look that's in there. So if you look at these lines that are kind of over his eye, that's kind of one way to do it. I'm just using the side of it and just dragging it down like that. So the square brush can get you some nice lines as well. So let me go back to this. I'm going to kind of work this area here with this big filbert. I think you also want to kind of match your energy to what it is you're painting and how you feel about it. So these rings, are kind of soft and swooping. So I want my energy to kind of match that a little bit. And I want to use this soft brush to get these sort of blurry, soft, rings and shapes that are behind there. And then just to show you, like back to a square brush, what it can do is if I want to begin to define some of those layers a little bit more, and maybe hit some of this gold in there, then I can use it flat like I did there for this sort of shape. And then I can also use the tip, right? Because we have a nice sharp edge here for that tip, and get some of that more detailed type ring, right? So that was all with the square brush. So you can use it flat, or you can use the tip to kind of get those lines. So then, of course, we have this big flat brush, which I think could be good for down here in the clothes and that sort of background clothes shape. And then we have this kind of spackly stuff, so I can kind of try to use that edge there to get, you know, that effect that I see there. But the main thing, you guys, is if you just use 12 different brushes every painting, and every time you're moving to an area, you're sort of behaving differently with it based on what you're doing. You're going to have enough variety and expression in your painting that, you know, will make it really beautiful and sophisticated. So that's just the main thing, and you guys will figure out all the different things your brushes can do. So what I'm showing you is like, you know, all the things I've discovered and how I use them, and you're going to have your own sort of discoveries. So this beard here, a lot of people, you know, back to the stabbing and dabbing, will think like I have to paint every hair on that beard and just make these little X's and crosshatches, and that's not really, you know, how it works. I can use the side of it and sort of make that sort of scumbly, scribbly, you know, beard look, and then add layers on top of that. So all these brushes are just different kinds of tools that you have at your disposal to use however you like while, you know, while you're constructing your painting. So palette knives are also kind of a cool idea. So one thing you could do to also is, you know, put some paint down that's, you know, maybe thick. So I can, you know, sort of add some paint. Where do I want it? And then you can kind of, you know, move some things or scratch into it, you know, with your palette knife. The other thing you can do is add the paint with your palette knife, right? Like that. Oh my gosh, look what I did. Okay, so most people would be all panicked. Maybe I did it for a reason, show you how you take care of it. So it's okay if things like that happen. So I got this big blob on his cheek, and so I'm just gonna like scrape it off, okay, best I can. And then I'll get my rag and kind of get the rest off, and then I'm gonna ignore it and just paint right over it, okay? So there's not enough paint there to influence, and so I'll just go over it with the brush stroke, and it's no big deal. So back to what I was doing. I added that with the palette knife, which is what got me into trouble, and then I can move it with my brush, right? You're not married to the shape that palette knife got, but there's a nice little expression in there. I even like that little dark thing that's in there that, you know, really kind of adds to it. So now I'm going to fix that. So if you mess up your painting and you put it down a brushstroke you don't like, or that, you know, just doesn't do it for you, it's totally fine. You either will cover it up with another brushstroke, or you will, you can always wipe it off. So that's typically what I do. Happens all the time. So Dino, are there any questions anybody has on there?
Yeah, we have a question. So Tori Mao is wondering, what is the best technique for painting hair?
Okay, that is a good question. So I don't have a lot of hair here. Oh, I do right there. Okay, so I'm going to show you another brush that I really like and how to paint this hair right here. So typically, I don't have a good example of hair with like highlights and all that, but typically what I do with hair is I start with big brushes like this, and I put in all the I block it in, darks and lights. Then I let that dry, and then I might glaze over some of the lights with another brush. Another color, a glazed transparent color. And then I let that dry, and then I come in and do the highlights with a more detailed brush. So right here, he has this hair that I'm going to do, and I'll start with this filbert here. And I'm just going to kind of block in the general shape of that. What you don't want to do with hair is get your little pointy brush and draw like little worms every individual hair, and then and not let it have form and come and go. You really want to block in the shape the hair makes and forget that there's individual strands. So I'm going to just kind of come in here with this brush, and I'm trying to just kind of get that shape. To paint the hair before I can paint and let that dry before I can paint those golden, blobs, lights. They're not blobs, they're lights. Okay, so this is sort of setting me up for the details. Now, you can use one of two brushes. You can use, where did it go? You can use a script brush. Here we go. So a script brush is more common, and I'm going to dip it in Galkid, and I'm going to get my color here. So, and I'm thinning the paint so that it'll go on really, really fluid. And then I'm rolling it into a point with my script brush. Okay, and now this is where I'm going to get that actual shape and darken it, and this is just kind of the blurry behind it. So you just have to be gutsy and just plant your brush and kind of whip it, and then go get more paint. The other thing is, if you hold your brush in the back of your brush, towards the end, if you hold it up here and you then you have to be really steady with your hand and it'll be clumpy. So I hold my brush back here at the end, and I keep a really light touch, and I try to use my whole arm to get that nice fluid movement. And I might even practice at first, getting that until I touch down and can do it. And you can go different directions. So that's the script brush. Now, the other brush you can use for hair or line work is this sword brush. So this, I've actually not used one of these very much. This is a very recent discovery, and it's my new love. I really love this brush now. So it's called a sword liner, and this is what it looks like when it's dry, but it all kind of forms into a point. So this one's a little bit fatter than this one. And so I'm going to you can get really cool effects with this. So I'm gonna have lots of Galkid and then some paint. And because it's so floppy, I suppose you could like kind of, I'll just do it for fun. But I bet you can like whack it and, you know, make interesting marks with it. I've never done that before, but it just occurred to me because it's so floppy. But what I've been using it for is to make really cool lines. So you can get like a lot of really neat effects with it. You can get really thin lines, you can get thicker lines. So that's like another way to get that hair effect. You know, go like fat to thin to fat to thin, you know, and move it like that. You can get some really neat line work with these. This painting's going to be a hot mess by the end of this because I'm showing you all these different experiments, but it's okay. I'll just paint over it. So that is, I don't know if you guys are impressed with this brush like I am, but it is so much fun. I was just talking to Esther about this brush, and she said that she calls it her leaf brush, and she makes leaves with it. So I don't know. It goes into this really cool point, and it holds a lot of paint, so you can get like nice fluid lines for a very long time with it. It is really fun. So those very thin lines that are up in here on the crown, I could get with those, and it could be really, really cool. Okay, another thing to show you with these round brushes. So I talked about the square brushes, I talked about the filberts. So just to review, filberts are these round tipped brushes. They come in all kinds of different sizes. You can get itty bitty ones. This isn't an itty bitty one, but it's a pretty small one. So when you have smaller shapes that are round, like, you know, up in here on the eyes or in the nostrils, you can, you know, these are kind of more meant for the smaller shaped things like lips, nose, whatever. And same thing with the round brushes. So here we have, you know, sort of a fatter round brush, and then maybe a more medium round brush. There's some really, really big round brushes like this one. So they come in all different sizes, and then a little one. So for eyes, what I think is great is if you sort of use maybe these 3 different size brushes. So you have your sort of medium square brush, your sort of small filbert brush, and your small round brush. And then you can even go down to a smaller round brush still. So this would be really 4 good brushes to use for an eye. And I actually, in the beginning, would probably use first filbert I was using. So to do eyes, I just want to illustrate how many brushes you need. To do eyes really, really well, and when I say eyes, I just mean the whole eye, like the whole entire eye, not just eyeballs. I would probably use these 4 brushes. And I would probably start with this big filbert, and I would, you know, block in with that big filbert all around. I've already done that. Then I would probably move to this square brush, and I would get the angles. Anywhere I have sort of sharp edges, angles, anything, you know, down here sometimes you want some nice square marks. Let's see. Mm-hmm. So you can, you know, add that, and then maybe one over here. And then you just sort of begin stacking these brush strokes. And of course they're gonna look, don't get worried if you have brush strokes that, stand out in the beginning, because after you add some more, they start to make sense. At first, they don't make sense. So you have to like wait until you have more in there. I should be looking at my source and not making it up. So this just kind of gives some angles and some structure, to the eye. And then I would go down to this smaller filbert and sort of add the more round brush strokes. Is there any other questions, Dino, or? Okay.
So Amanda King is wondering, what is the best use for fan brushes?
Oh, that's a good question. Honestly, I don't use fan brushes much, but let me see how I could probably use that. So the two different ways to use a fan brush, well, probably more than two different ways, so here we have a fan brush. So they come in lots of different shapes and sizes. And again, this is not a brush that I use very much, but you can use it as a blender. So you can take an area like this that, got a little wild, and you can start, blending with it. So that's one way. You can kind of drag things down. See how I did that? And it got like kind of blended. So those are the different effects you can get with it. So one way is to blend. Another way to use it is for sort of texture, like, let me see, what do I have on here? I suppose the beard. So if I want to kind of add some texture with the beard here, right? It can maybe do some sort of crisscross applesauce, right? For texture. Do you see how it's doing that? And so that could be another, use of it. So there isn't, like, in my opinion, on any of these brushes, like one most definite positive way the fan brush is used for, because you see like those Bob Ross videos, right, where Bob Ross is making the happy trees and he takes his big fan brush and he, goes dab, 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 and he makes these like tree shapes with it. So it's not like that's what this brush is destined for, and that's all it can do, is our dab, dab, dab Bob Ross tree. It can be used however you want. I don't use it mostly because I just kind of forget about it. But now that I did use it a little bit, I can see there's some cool effects that it got. If I added this to my sort of collection of brushes and I had it around, I'd probably use it. I just think I forget about it and I don't have very many. And maybe I subconsciously associate it with Bob Ross and happy trees. And so I haven't picked one up much. But there's nothing wrong with them. The only thing that I would say is wrong with them is if you use these exclusively to blend, and it's your go-to to blend everything. So I would say that's probably what you don't want to use it for. So just like all the rest of your brushes or palette knives or, scrape out tools or all the tools that you have available to you, it's another tool that can get you different effects. But the same rules apply. Variety. You want lots and lots of variety. You don't want everything to be same. So you don't want to stamp with it over and over again. You want to use it as a tool. Back to the eyes, on this little tiny round brush, what you can do at that point is start stacking up your brush strokes with all the little details. So I have here a dark part at the inner part of his eye. I can, just plant a brush stroke and leave it, plant a brush stroke and leave it. And you can begin to, add some nuances in there, like there's a nice little kind of turquoise spot there. You can begin just adding all kinds of crazy colors. So I can just take this red. It's not even in the painting. This doesn't, really exist in the painting. And I can maybe put it, right here just for effect, and maybe I want to put a little blob there for effect, right? So these little sort of, one of our mentors, Heather Bailey, calls them tic tacs. So adding these little tic tacs of color, this bright turquoise around the eyes and just like various little shapes. You don't want it to be all same, right? You want it to vary. Is kind of a cool way to add some expression into things that maybe deviates from the source, but still makes sense. And so using, 5, 6, 7 different brushes on the eyes, you're going to get a much more expressive eye that has more variety to it and really, really looks, interesting and expressive and beautiful and still true to form. The other thing that you can do with these round brushes, or for that matter, the script brush, this is something John does a lot. If you have, say, texture in the background and you want to kind of jazz up this texture with some of that, what you can do is you want to use thicker paint, so you don't want to put Galkit or anything on it, and you can very lightly sort of drag it, vertically or horizontally like this. So it's sort of parallel with the canvas. And you can get, like if you were trying to make sun rays, you could kind of do that with sun rays by, moving it in different directions. And it will, give you kind of cool texture by using it this way. So that's another thing you can do with these. Of course, this is like your best tool to make little dots. So this is like the best way to make details on stars, or if you have little dots that you want to form coming down, the round brushes are good for that. So all these brushes are different shapes, different sizes, different ways to use them. I think how you should sort of start your painting, though, is with big brushes. You want brushes at least this big or this big to start your painting. And you'll want to begin being, more expressive than and wild with it in the beginning. Really having, really cool brushstrokes in there. And this is where you can just kind of go nuts with it and add, drippy things and get lots of paint on there. And, you can, sort of drip and have different types of expression going on in there. I can get rid of my Bob Ross marks. So it's in the beginning that I think you have that like sort of high energy with the big expression. And then as you bring it more towards refinement, you're going to move down in your brush size. And that's why you need 12 different brushes to make a painting. I almost always start with this brush. And in the beginning, I told you, I would tell you what my favorite brush is. And I would say that this is probably my favorite brush. And then my second favorite brush is a medium-sized filbert. So, and the reason I love this brush is you can scumble with it like this and get sort of like, kind of blended, scrubby sort of marks with it, right? You can get this type of look with it. You can just go and add a nice sweeping, brush stroke into it. You can cover a lot of ground with this brush. I can use the corner of it and really like finesse some things and get kind of cut into my my subject by, painting in the background and using the corner. So I love this brush. I use it all the time. I use it for acrylic. I use it for oil. It's my favorite brush. And then this is probably my second favorite because it's very versatile. I can use it like that way, perpendicular to the, using it the short way like that, or you can use it flat and get a bigger brush stroke. So I just found that you can do a lot with this brush. But I'm going to tell you something that could change your life. And that is that having a favorite brush can ruin your paintings. So don't get so in love with the brush. And even though these are my favorites, I tell myself all the time, Elli, put your favorite brush down. Elli, put your favorite brush down. Because if I'm not careful, I could use these two brushes for the entire painting. And that would not make for a very good painting. I have at least 12 brushes around me that I can see and that I can grab. I usually have 3 or 4 in this left hand. I'm right-handed, while I'm painting. I have these brushes, and then I have one that I'm working with. So having that many brushes around me, I've over the years practiced and learned I need to use all of my brushes and not just have them there, but not use them. So having a favorite brush and sort of sticking with it will wreck all your paintings. Try to not be so in love with your favorite brush because really it's the variety and having lots of different types of brush strokes and different things going on in your painting is what's going to make your painting really beautiful, really stand out. Your brush strokes and the energy that went into them, the emotion that went into them will all be recorded in that brush stroke, and your audience and the collectors and the people that are looking at your art will feel it, and your painting will really grip them in their gut. And it won't just be, something that you kind of pass by. They'll be arrested by it because those brush strokes are so impactful. So really, really work at figuring out what all these brushes do and practicing. Now, in order to pull off water, say you're painting a waterfall, well, that trick I showed you of using the side of your square brush and your round brush to kind of get that scrabbly look, that's how you do a waterfall, right? You're gonna paint. I'm not gonna tell you how to do a waterfall, but anyway, that will be a great trick on how to do a waterfall. If you were painting clouds, you are gonna want to stack up all kinds of filberts, big filberts down to smaller filberts. So thanks for being here, and I've really enjoyed it, and I'll post this finished, looking good, hopefully in the next week, and then you guys can see it. All right, I will see you next time.